Aloha and welcome to the Halekulani Hotel. We're here for a very special return episode of Tuning Up with Iggy and Dave. I am, of course, Dave Moss, President and CEO of the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra, and I'm joined after what seems like many months in person with our concertmaster, Iggy Jang. Aloha, Iggy.
Aloha, Dave. Good to see you. Aloha, everyone. We are so fortunate and honored to be here at the Halekulani Hotel. Dave, I don't know if you knew that, but I had my wedding reception here. But this place holds a special heart within the organization as well.
Absolutely. I wouldn't think it'd be too far to say the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra would not exist the way it does today and has for the past decade without the tremendous support of the Halekulani Hotel for our Masterwork series. The entire leadership team here, everyone at the hotel, all the way through the concierge, and all of the housekeepers here welcome all of our guest artists for our Masterwork series. And we have one of those artists with us today, someone who's certainly not here for the first time. But yeah, grateful to be here upstairs right next to La Mer for today's Tuning Up. So thank you to the Halekulani.
Thank you very much. And today's special guest is Maestro Keitaro Harada. I'm so, again, excited to play and share the stage with you this week. You've been here a couple times already. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I was on the road the last few times you were here. Right. Can you tell us what were your first impressions of coming to Hawaii to conduct the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra?
Of course, I'm so excited to be back. Aloha, everyone. When I first got the call to come to Hawaii Symphony, and then I knew it was always called the Halekulani Masterworks, when this collaboration happened. And I've been to Hawaii several times growing up. Born and raised in Japan, you come to Hawaii often, and I love this hotel. And so I'm thinking, wow, it's called the Halekulani Masterworks. I wonder where I'm gonna stay. But I didn't really ask, I didn't want to be snoozy about it, or nosy about it. And so I just waited until I got the itinerary at the very last moment, saying, oh, I do get to stay at the Halekulani. Yes.
It's revered among artist managers and conductors and artists when they're coming to Hawaii. They are very excited to. It's one of the benefits of conducting our great orchestra as well. So this is not your first, your second, but
third concert with the orchestra, I believe.
Excellent.
Yeah, second Masterwork series. The last time I came here, Scott Yanch oboe was the world premiere of his oboe concerto. And that was a really, really wonderful program. And I'm so excited to be back here. I was already supposed to be back here a few years ago, but then the pandemic happened and everything got pushed around. And then this time, I'm just so excited to be here to present this program with an orchestra that I just really love.
Can we go back to the onset of the pandemic, March of 2020? I think you were scheduled just a few weeks after the onset of the pandemic because, I started March 10th.
Right.
We go back a decade or more.
12 years ago.
12 years ago, yes. And you and I had a very early conversation because as the borders to Hawaii were shut down, I remember reaching out saying, well, do you want to come to Hawaii for a little bit?
Right.
Make sure that we could do the performance with you. Then we'd have a conductor in town. And little did we know that it would take 2+ years to make good on this invitation.
Yeah, I think it was that 2020 because the pandemic hit and then borders got shut down and you couldn't bring in the original conductors that were able to come. And I got stuck in Japan and I couldn't go back to the US at that point. And then so we were chatting and he had just gotten the job and then things in Japan were, despite the pandemic, it was fine because we had done enough experiments and then we were doing concerts without audience at first and then so I think I was telling you that and then I said this can happen but I think that's all history by now.
Absolutely. Quite a bit has changed over the past 2 years, but we're really grateful to have you in town for a very unique program. But before we jump into the program, boy, I haven't asked this question in a while. I'll let you ask it.
All right.
Well, there's only one Dave who can ask that question. However,
oh, no.
For our audience members and viewers, we're all looking forward to this weekend. You on the podium, but we won't have much of a chance to get to know you.
Okay.
So this is the ideal platform, excuse me, to tell us about your, not just your career, but how you came about to become a conductor, your musical path, please.
Sure. I come from a non-musical family. My family took me to a Nutcracker performance when I was very, very little, and I slept through the entire thing. And so that's when I think my mom realized, not this, you know? And so I went into the complete sports side. I played tennis, I played baseball, I have like black belts in martial arts, and then that was all that. But my school that I went to from K through 12, they did musicals. The high school kids did musicals every year. And then I was a little child in elementary school, and I saw West Side Story for the first time. And then when I saw that, I was like, oh man, this is really, really wonderful production. Like, I'm so involved in it. And so I wanted to become a Broadway star on stage dancing and singing. That was my dream. And then as I got older, I realized that I'm not a good dancer, and I'm also not a good singer. So with these two out of the formula, the only thing that I could really do but still be in Broadway, was to be an orchestra pit musician. And so when I figured that out in my life, I thought, okay, I'm gonna be an orchestra pit musician, and because West Side Story was so still deep down in my DNA, I started off as a saxophonist because it starts with that big saxophone solo, and I thought that would be cool. And then, you know, if you play the saxophone, maybe I'll get a girlfriend or 2 or 3, you know? Like, you know.
It's happened to the best of us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like 6th grade K Harada.
Wait, before you talk about
Yeah.
any girlfriends,
Yeah.
how old were you, and were your parents musicians?
No one is a musician. It's just me. I think I started music just like everyone who would start an instrument, like in wind ensemble, so 5th grade, 6th grade.
5th grade, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to become a pit musician because according to yourself, you can't dance or sing. But
Right.
that remains to be seen. Well, maybe I'll test you this weekend. But
Maybe,
anyway.
yeah, exactly. And so once I got started, I got hooked, and I wanted to play all the wind instruments. I learned to play all of them, and then in high school, that's when I decided. I was growing up in Japan, in Tokyo, but then in high school, I decided, okay, I really want to pursue music. But the school that I went to in Japan wasn't that right environment. So I wanted to go to outside to somewhere that would have a very nurturing place for music education, and then that was Interlochen. So I auditioned for Interlochen and went there for
In Michigan.
in Michigan. So I went from Tokyo to Interlochen, Michigan, which was the biggest change of my entire life, you know, like completely different culture, different population. So that's where I went to high school.
Did you, before you left for Interlochen, did you have people in Japan telling you, you know, it's a different culture, I advise you maybe to rethink your decision?
Not at all. In fact, when I auditioned to Interlochen, I didn't tell anyone, not even my family. I recorded my audition tape, cassette tape back then. You know, I recorded by myself, sent it and mailed it all by myself. And then when I got the acceptance letter, that's when I first told my family, hey, I got an acceptance letter to the school. I got scholarship. I'm going. Hasta la vista.
And your parents?
They couldn't stop me because I did it all by myself.
Wow, you already knew how to do things as an independent student already.
Yeah, I'm an only child, so
it must have been difficult then.
You
for your
know,
mom, no?
You know, for my mom, I think it was difficult, but at the same time, so I'm an only child and a single mom. So like she was always very busy working to make sure I had the right, you know, environment to grow. And then I was raised by my grandma and my mom. So but I was super independent. I did stuff by myself all the time. So for her, it was like, you know what? This is the world that you want to go into. This is the life that you're choosing. Go for it. And I did, and I'm very thankful for that openness.
And Dave, did you always have a direction in your path? And maybe can we fast forward to maybe when the two of you met somewhere?
Yeah, I've never had the sort of independence or direction that Kay has had. But maybe it's the rebel saxophone player in you. Is that
Maybe.
Yeah, because you went to Interlochen as the saxophone player.
I did, and then during Interlochen, got into conducting.
So we met when he was a conductor.
Right.
So I did not, until he suggested programming a saxophone concerto this week, it hadn't really occurred to me that
I'm a saxophonist.
he's a closet saxophonist.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so that was, how long ago was that?
So it's probably been 12 years. We first met at Tanglewood Music Festival, and then, you know, it was like every year a different festival, a different orchestra. We'd see each other and cross paths and have a great time hanging out, and a lot of time in Chicago together.
Yep.
But this was back Schulte, right?
Yeah, Schulte competition. That would have been right after Tanglewood, so 2011, 2010-ish.
And you did well.
Yeah, I didn't win, but I was close.
You were close.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But that was really, you know, so we've skipped over. You're at Interlochen, you know, decide you want to be a conductor.
Right.
Then you go.
So I started conducting in high school, and the reason is because I was in a wind ensemble at Interlochen, and my conducting teacher was Frederick Fennell, who's like the big wind ensemble conductor guy. He's like the mensch of conductors for wind ensemble. And so when I was playing under him, for me, that was my first experience playing under a maestro. Like, I've never had a real conductor growing up. And I realized, wow, there are people who make music like this. That's really, really cool. And then so I went up to him and I said, I want to start conducting. I want to learn how to conduct. And he started to teach me, and then he let me conduct one encore in a concert that he was conducting. And when I conducted that encore at the performance with the audience, with the applause, and it was like an encore of 40 seconds. It was the Interlochen encore. I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do in life. This is what I was born to do in life. And then since then, I was just super hooked.
But that was the wind ensemble?
It was the wind ensemble.
So
yeah.
when you made the transition between conducting a wind ensemble to a full orchestra, how was that transition?
You know, I was fortunate because I was at Interlochen, because I was able to study conducting, but in both realms, in conduct wind ensemble and orchestra with the orchestra teacher there. So I think the very first time I conducted the orchestra was in rehearsal, and it was Meistersinger Overture, and it was so much fun. It was, and then my teacher, my orchestra conducting teacher, immediately said, "You need to learn the viola." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "You don't know how to read alto clef right now. Go learn the viola." And then that's when I started to that's when I picked up viola. I'm horrible at it, but you know, at least I understand the concept of, you know, bowing and how to make a sound on a string instrument.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to play so many different instruments. We'll also get to you conducting opera later, but you and Dave were talking about the genesis of this weekend's program being the Saxophone Concerto.
Right.
Tell us about this weekend's program.
Sure. First I thought this concert was going to be at the big hall, you know, at the Blaisdell. And then so that was what I had in mind. And then it changed to the Hawai Theater, which I've never been to until this week. So then when I learned it was at the Hawai Theater, then I got the understanding that it needed to, the instrumentation has its limitation, and so I had to rethink the entire program because I had a different program originally, and then it had to get changed. And then so when I was working on this program, it just happened to be, I think it was 2020 July-ish. And I know it's exactly July because in 2020 July, two things happened back to back that was very impactful to my life. First, it was July 2nd when Kapustin died. And then 4 days later, Ennio Morricone died. And I just love these two composers. I'm a big fan of movie music also, so when Morricone died, I was so in shock. And then right after Kapustin, and then I love Kapustin's piano work. So, you know how I was in this phase where I was just listening to, you know, like pandemic mode at home, just listening to listening to music on YouTube or Spotify. And when you do a lot of searches online on your computer, a lot of things populate, right? Well, this saxophone concerto populated. And I didn't know that Kapustin had written a saxophone concerto. And there's one recording on YouTube. And then I was like, wow, I don't know this piece at all. And then I'm a saxophonist and I don't know it. And then I asked several of my teachers and they didn't know about it at all. And so what I realized was that it has just never been performed except for these like few times, like literally like 4 or 5 times since it has been written. So I said, I really want to do this sometime, and I had it in my back of my head. It's never been performed in the United States, and it had never been performed in Japan. So I created an opportunity to do the Japan premiere in 2021 in December, and then when this Hawaii concert came about, I thought, okay, I should put it here, and it's a good coupling with the Yoshimatsu. We're doing 3 pieces by Yoshimatsu. And when I first came to Hawaii Symphony, the very first time with the Masterworks, and got to understand the orchestra, and I wanted to make sure I wanted to do a piece that highlights a lot of the players of the orchestra, but also makes sense to this community. And then in this community, in this island, there are so many birds. Like, we hear it right now. Like, there are just birds everywhere, and like little birds trying to eat your food. And then so I wanted to see if I could make some programming that's related to birds. And that to me is very, Hawaii. So Yoshimatsu is a composer, a Japanese composer, living composer, who writes a lot about birds and bird sounds. And he's also very much a jazz, rock, funk musician. And so Kapustin is very jazz. And so this just kind of merged well together, and then hence why this programming happened.
So very cohesive program. Nikolai Kapustin, Ukrainian-born. Dave, how did you find our saxophonist extraordinaire for this weekend?
Well, don't have to go far. We really have one of the best in the world, and right here in Hawaii, Todd will be joining us, faculty member at UH, plays with the Royal Hawaiian Band. I think has played with just about every rock and other band here in Hawaii. I think he's really a great example of the diversity of our musicians here and their fluidity in going from classical to jazz to concerto with orchestra. So yeah, we're delighted to have Todd joining us. And actually, if you heard the opening of our Masterworks series back in November, with Scott Yu conducting, you've already heard Todd. We opened that program with the Mio Creation of the World. Very bold programming, we've been told, to open our season with that. But you get this blaring, in the best way possible, saxophone solo to open that Creation of the World. It was really kind of a shock to the system to hear that at Hawaii Theater Center, to open our Masterworks series, but very widely loved from the audience. Hopefully you enjoyed it as well. But yeah, so Todd's someone who we see quite frequently with the Symphony. It'll be great to see him and a few of his band members join us this week.
Yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity to hear Todd. He's so multi-talented. I'm so envious of his training and his culture. As Dave mentioned, we classical musicians sometimes stay in our own world, but Todd knows classical music, has been trained as a classical student, but also knows jazz, does a lot of traditional Hawaiian music, commercial side, has been touring all over in so many genres. And Maestro, you have had the chance to meet him yesterday before we actually rehearse.
And actually, Todd and I already performed together once, because when the ANA festival happened in 19, I think, Todd played in Kalapana. And then Kalapana was one of the guest artists for the ANA festival. And so I knew him from them that moment. And then so when Todd's name came up as a potential soloist, I was like, of course, I already know how he sounds, and he would be perfect because this piece is very jazz.
It's very jazzy. I know Todd from playing pictures at an exhibition, and so very much looking forward to these weekends. So you just mentioned it, a lot of different infusions or flavors in this weekend's program, jazz, classical. Is that also your training, or how you grew up at home, your love of music?
Yeah, I think so. So like before classical music came about, I grew up in a environment where my family listened to Beatles and Beach Boys and Elvis Presley, Stevie Wonder. Like that was my culture, and then jazz was a big influence of me. And so like I like Mariah Carey, who doesn't? But then I also, as an instrumentalist, because I started off with saxophone, it's just natural that you play classical and you play jazz, and you play rock and you play funk. And so, and ska, I was in a ska band during my college years. So like this is, for me, the all multifacetedness of different types of genre of music is something that I feel extremely comfortable at doing. And so, at the end of the day, music is music. And then
Right.
I'm a champion about not genrifying music. I think people should just appreciate music for what it is and how cool it is to hear, music of different genres. I had a masterworks on a stage by Hawaii Symphony when, people anticipate classical music, and it is classical music, but there's a twist to it.
You're like completely setting me up and I have to take this opportunity to talk about our Sheraton Starlight series, because what you're describing is something that this orchestra has really embraced throughout its history. And this is our last indoor Masterworks performance, our last indoor Halekulani Masterworks performance at the Hawaii Theater Center. And 2 weeks from Friday, we will be opening actually 2 weeks from Wednesday, we will be opening our Masterworks, our Starlight series at the Waikiki Shell with 3 community concerts. Our first will be Wednesday, May 25th to support the Hawaii Food Bank. Joe Stepik will be conducting. Then that weekend, talk about diversity in programming, we've got Def Leppard on Friday and the Rolling Stones on Saturday. So our classical orchestra, our symphonic orchestra, playing the music of Def Leppard and the Rolling Stones. The following Wednesday, we're doing another community concert, this time to benefit the Humane Society of Hawaii. And then Joanne Folletta joins us for The Planets for a weekend. Sarah Hicks joins us the following weekend for a program of Gershwin, including the Piano Concerto in F with Aaron Deal. And yeah, really, there's one other thing that we have to say. You've programmed an entire concert of bird music right before we go to the Waikiki Shell, where we've had some issues with the birds last summer.
Oh, really?
So I hope that these are the last birds that we see for a few weeks. I hope it's only music of birds that we...
What happens with the birds at the Shell? Like, I've never been to the Shell, so...
I'm not sure. I don't have a direct line with the
With the
pigeon chair, but
Okay.
but this symphony should be known for the Symphony of Hawaiian Birds.
Yes.
Okay.
That should be what we're known for.
Yes.
We love our friends who have been staying in the Waikiki Shell.
Our winged
Hopefully,
friends.
they have found another refuge. I was at the Shell a couple of weeks ago, and it seemed that they have found a different place.
What were you doing at the Waikiki Shell, Iggy?
Well, I was fortunate to play alongside Smokey Robinson. So
fun.
yeah, it was a lot of fun, as have all those Hawaii Symphony concerts been. I see Rolling Stones at the Starlight series. I remember my brother listening to Rolling Stone and closing the door and just putting the stereo really loud while I was practicing scales and Paganini concertos. But now today everything merges
It's all,
it's all intertwined.
music is still music.
Well, the best way to experience music at the Waikiki Shell this summer is actually through lawn books we're doing this year. So these are $44. There's 4 tickets in here. They're good for any of our performances at the Waikiki Shell this summer. So these are available at our website, myhso.org. Real simple way. They're great gifts. You could buy them for all your employees. Really help us fill the Waikiki Shell this summer for our summer season at the Waikiki Shell.
That's right. Maestro, you talked a little bit about Yoshimatsu and the pieces that have bird connotation. This little piece, Adam Hart's Club Suite.
Yes.
We rehearsed this week, and
Yeah.
I had to find myself the right groove.
Yes.
Because you mentioned it's very jazzy, rock, or
Right.
popish. But sometimes, as a classical musician in the orchestra, we just want to get notes right. And you were
Correct.
actually telling us this week, you are professional, you're fantastic players, but this is not just about getting all the notes correctly. what do we need to do to kind of feel the groove?
Well, what was funny about, so to explain to our viewers, we had just rehearsed the Atom Hearts Club Suite yesterday, and then this is a music that involves, there's the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club, there's Emerson Lake Tarkus, there's Pink Floyd, there's an English progressive rock band called Yes, and there's also all these are mixed into a cocktail in one. So there's this grooveness to it, you know, there's this rock and roll groove, there's this syncopated groove to all of this music. And so, but when you write that in notation, it just looks funny, like, you know, like all these like triplets with accent. So our musicians were really
Trying
trying so hard, thinking 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. I was like, stop, just listen. Like, you don't even have to think about it. Just play the notes where you feel it's going to be right. And then once we said that, it was fine because you stopped counting. You know, you just kind
That's
of.
right.
Dot, dot, dot. So that's one of the things where, when written in notation, it becomes difficult. But once we understand what the groove is, and it's about just feeling the energy and then feeling what feels right and then enjoying it.
That's right.
Yeah. I think we start to forget about enjoying music when we get too concentrated on rhythms and intonation and, you know, ensemble.
Yeah, when we're trying to achieve perfection.
Right, exactly.
Regarding programming, so you have some orchestras in Japan, you're conducting, guest conducting here. I understand you're music director in Savannah.
Yes.
Do you program the same thing everywhere, or is there, are you taking into consideration how audiences in different parts of the world may react to your programming?
I don't program the same at all. Like I said, for this week with Hawaii and the Birds, like this is very Hawaii program. However, I will say about Yoshimatsu is a composer, like since I'm a Japanese conductor, I do feel there is some element of me that I have to champion Japanese composers and share to the world, you know, some of the great compositions that have been created by Japanese composers. So I do have that element. And so, but it's not that wherever I go, I always conduct a Yoshimatsu program. I think the last time I did a Yoshimatsu was with Seattle Symphony, but that was like a year and a half ago. So, so yes and no. There's a little bit of that, but mainly I do, if it's an orchestra that I know, I want to program for the orchestra, but for the audience, like what is this audience at HSO would love to hear and would make sense to them. And this is Hawaii, you know, there's a great mix of US culture, the Japanese culture here. So I think this is a nice blended program.
Talking about blended cultures and programs this weekend, you'll be conducting the Masterworks on Saturday and Sunday, but you'll also be closing out our Hapa Symphony series.
Yes.
So for those tuning in to this episode, join us for one more tomorrow. We'll be joined by Raiatea Helm, who will be the featured artist in our final Hapa Symphony program. But talk to our Masterwork audience, if you will, about Friday's performance and your experience with Hawaiian music and Hawaiian culture and the blending of the symphonic tradition with that.
Sure. So like I said, like my introduction to music was through the oldies, through the pop genre, through, you know, like even today, my Spotify list is filled with more music that is non-classical, you know? And so I think it's just natural for me to appreciate the pop culture. And then I spent many years at Cincinnati Pops Orchestra because I was associate conductor for Cincinnati Symphony. And when I was doing concerts with the Cincinnati Pops, it was reaching out a completely different audience. Like I will never forget two concerts I did that I would never forget. One was with Kristen Chenoweth, and then it was an outdoor concert, thousands of people. And then the other one was with Aretha Franklin before she passed. And to have Aretha Franklin, you know, sing R-E-S-P-E-C-T right by you in front of thousands of people, like, I don't care what genre musician you classify me as, you can't beat that. You know, like, it's just great. And so I think the orchestras that do crossovers where they do pops or Hawaiian traditional music and classical all together, I think you're winning all kinds of audience. I think it's the perfect blend because you have people, you reach people in so many different degrees. And so this HAPA program is fantastic. I'm very excited about it. When I did the ANA festival, it was a blended concert. We did classical repertoire, we did opera singers, and then we did Hawaiian artists. And then I think I appreciated that about this orchestra, because this orchestra is capable of doing that. This orchestra enjoys. You could see it from their musicians that they enjoy playing the Hawaiian music, and so they should. And then most importantly is the audience is really into the Hawaiian music because it's their culture. So I think it's a beautiful thing.
That's right. Singing. How did you get involved with opera conducting? Because in the U.S., it's sort of they put you in a box.
They do put you in a box.
Conductors are being put in a box.
Yes.
But you've kept your versatility.
Yep.
How did you manage that?
In high school, when I started conducting, I was introduced to Bohème, and through a radio. And I heard Bohème for the first time, and I thought, wow, this is the most beautiful music ever. And that was the moment where I said, okay, I really want to learn about opera, learn about languages, learn about the theater, because I think for me it was closest to the musical. Like my original passion to music was musical, and then that goal and dream kind of failed, but then there's this opera, which is the highest art of all arts, right? And so it was the closest thing to musical, and so I really wanted to get into this. And then the closest, the door opened for me when Lauren Mazel started this festival at Castleton prior to his death, and I immediately went to him, became his assistant, learned from him, and then that was the opening of the door. And then where we met, we performed Ariadne of Naxos at Tanglewood. Maestro Levine had hired me to be his assistant, but he couldn't conduct, so I ended up conducting with Maestro Dochnani, and the Strauss was just like amazing. It's just one of those great, wonderful works, right? And I was in an opera company for almost 10 years, and to me, the vocal language, the voice, and being able to put together a drama with classical music and the theatrical aspect, the costume, and then the storyline, and the libretto, and everything is, to me, the most complete art form. And so I'm very, very passionate about it. That is my core repertoire, and I do a lot of opera. And in the United States market, it is very difficult. It's really weird because opera conductors are just opera conductors, ballet conductors are just ballet conductors, and symphony conductors are just symphony conductors. And then in Europe, if you're a conductor, you're a conductor.
Right.
So it's just so weird. I haven't quite figured it out.
And maybe that's why sometimes opera conductors here know how to deal with singers, but not with instrumentalists, and orchestra, and conductor who conduct orchestras know how to deal with musicians, but not singers. I don't know.
That is very true. No,
I believe singers are still musicians, Iggy.
Yeah. It's about their breathing, It's just, I totally
anyway,
agree
sounds
with
like
you.
sorry, apologize. A very busy week for you, Maestro.
Yeah.
It is a busy week, but we know you enjoy Hawaii.
I
so
do.
What are you looking forward to most besides rehearsals and performances? You have restaurants on your list? Is it just time at the beach? What?
There's I love some of the new restaurants that, like, my wife is with me this week, and one of the things that it's kind of unfortunate, and I don't know if I should be saying this, but our rehearsals are during dinner time. And so this week, my wife's made reservations to all these great restaurants that I love going to, of which I'm not going to any of them because we're in rehearsal. But I'm glad she's enjoying it, and I love the food culture in Hawaii. I just love waking up to the beautiful sunset. Thank you, Halakalani, for the beautiful view of the ocean, and just being here. But far more importantly, I'm just here happy to make making music with the musicians, and getting to work together with you, which we haven't been able to. So
Well, speaking of the halekulani and the future, we just this week launched our 22-23 halekulani Masterworks season. If you're a subscriber, you received an email already this week. You'll be receiving a beautifully designed packet that'll hit mailboxes Thursday or Friday of this week. We look forward to you renewing your subscription for last year. We have a lot for next year, we have a lot to look forward to next year. Dane Lamb will be joining us to open the season with Dvorak Symphony No. 9, alongside a timpani concerto featuring one of our colleagues, Brad Davis, in Michael Dougherty's Raise the Roof. And then in November, Otomo will be joining us, a long time return. We've been trying a number of times throughout the pandemic to get Otomo back with the orchestra, and he'll be doing an all-orchestral program with Mendelssohn 4 and Mozart 35. We'll be doing Carmina Burana with the Oahu Choral Society. Earl Lee will be joining us for Brahms 4 and Clara Schumann Piano Concerto. We've got Beethoven 7 with Scott Yu. In February, we'll be joined by Anthony Parther, a really young rising star conductor. And on that program, we had already scheduled for a few weeks now another premiere, another work by Lelehua Lanzalotti. If you joined us for our most recent Masterworks performance, she had a piece on that Iggy directed, actually, on our Beethoven piano performance. Well, this piece that we had scheduled, Eyes the Color of Time, she was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize just 2 days ago. So we are thrilled to welcome Pulitzer Prize finalist Lelehua Lanzalotti and her piece on the program in February. Then in March, we have Hans Graf joining us again with a J-hook for Mozart Piano Concerto. Meian Chen will be joining us with Charles Yang for the Philip Glass Violin Concerto, as well as Schoenberg Verclair Tanakh and the Stravinsky Symphony of Wind. And then our indoor season will close with, yes, you've read it correctly, an electric bass concerto. Victor Wooten from Bela Fleck and the Flecktones wrote a electric bass concerto that was premiered with Boston Symphony just a few weeks ago, and we'll be closing our season with that with Aaron Yoshima on the podium. So a really eclectic, diverse program all of next season. Some of the best masterworks with Beethoven and Brahms and Dvorak, alongside some new upcoming soloists, some things off the beaten path, etc. So if you're not a subscriber, it's the best way to experience the entire season. And we look forward to seeing everyone at the Hawaii Theater Center this weekend, at the Waikiki Shell this summer, and back with the symphony next season. So
very much looking forward to seeing you all this weekend with Maestro Keitaro Harada. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Iggy.
And of course, saxophonist extraordinaire Todd Yukumoto.
Thank you everyone for watching, and I hope to see you at all the performances this week in the Hapa program and the Masterworks series.
Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you soon. Aloha.